goes up to PensyFan19 and Seaboard Railfan. They are good people who make good content I consider better than mine even. I recommend you check them out. Links in the description below. Now back to the video.
Sir, that's not her door.
I know. It's yours.
Who needs to introduce this engine? It's one of the United States' most famous passenger engines. Yeah, I mean the F40PH. Didn't see this one coming now, did you? Well, here we are with possibly the longest awaited episode of Engines of Metrolink. Today, we'll be going through the story of Metrolink 800. And yes, Amtrak Guy 365 has also done an episode on the F40PH. Link in the description. This is going to be a long episode. Probably the longest surpassing the F59PHI episode.
Yeah, I probably said this be the longest, but it's probably not, so ignore that statement.
Let's not get it too off track and onto the episode. So we'll start off on why this engine exists today. After Amtrak realized the failure of the SDP-40Fs and P-30CHs, you needed a locomotive that can run short distance trains like the San Diegan that ran between Los Angeles and San Diego, California, and the non-electrified parts of the Northeast Corridor, mainly the New Haven to Boston Corridor. EMD's response was the F40PH, a 3,000 horsepower cowl unit with head and power. These engines were way more reliable than other engines, completely booting the E and F units from service and shortening the lifespan of the SDP-40F significantly, along with replacing the P-30CHs around 20 years afterward. Amtrak was starting to get practically horny.
No, Alec, you can't say it. You got the younglings watching. Think of the children.
Oh yeah? Well, here's a little lesson from George Carlin. You know what I say? The children. Okay, that's enough. This is Funny Canuck Man's EOA series. Amtrak, who was liking the F40PHs, was wanting even more F40PHs, so they traded in several SDP-40Fs for a rebuild known as the F40PHR. And that's where our story begins. Metrolink 800 was built as Amtrak 396 in August of 1985. 396 was one of a whopping 210 F40PHs built for Amtrak between 1975 and 1988. With 6 more coming onto Amtrak from Go Transit in 1990. It was just one of the units that were known as Amtrak's poster boy units. The F40PH was eventually used as a do-it-all locomotive, but that's when the 2 engines were added onto Amtrak's roster to be rid of them, being that they were showing their age. Those 2 being the GE B32-8WH in 1991 to supplement the delay of another class, the GE Genesis series, which arrived in 1993. Not to mention that EMD F59PHIs were starting to show up on commuter roads by 1994. The F40 slowly started to decrease in numbers, whether by wrecks or by retirement, and it was by 2002 where all were retired. Well, Amtrak had most of its F40PH roster on their hands. They decided to sell some of their F40PHs. 396 was no exception, with it arriving on Metrolink property sometime in 2003. However, it wasn't just 396 that was purchased by the commuter railroad. 3 more were ordered and were likely going to be in operation. Those were 256, 300, and 338. However, they were instead used as parts sources for 396 and all scrapped by 2007. 396, now numbered 800, was now the only F40PHR on Metrolink's roster. Onto technical specifications, the unit once again was basically an F59PH, but they had a 44 model number due to being based off the GP40-2 and the F45. They also have an EMD 645E3 engine instead of some 10G engine. And instead of having a 3-piece window Triclops cab, you have a 2-piece window for the cab. The unit has 3,000 horsepower running on B-B wheel and range Blomberg M trucks. The unit also has a weight of 260,000 pounds. The engine came at a length of 56 feet 2 inches, a width of 10 feet 7 inches, and a height of 15 feet 7.5 inches. The unit has a top speed of 103 miles per hour. On Amtrak is 396. The unit came built with the Nathan K5LA, but would then get a Nathan Oldcast P2 once it arrived on Metrolink. Here are some samples. 800 is mainly used as backup power when the locomotive suffered failures on work trains or as a switching locomotive, since Metrolink didn't have any official switching locomotives. Occasionally it could be seen pulling and pushing trains on the main line and even leading special trains too. As for accidents, surprisingly on Metrolink it didn't have any, but it did have one on an Amtrak in 1989 involving that at a grade crossing, in which it was repaired. The accident happened in Chicago, Illinois. Metrolink proved that the F40PH was a literal powerhouse still capable of its duties even 30 years later. But that doesn't mean that powerhouses can't be replaced. Maybe commuter railroads such as MBTA and Music City Star can still run F40s, but 800 couldn't avoid one thing: modernization. The F125s were ordered by Metrolink starting in 2017, and engines were arriving and taking down other units left and right. 800 was no exception. Once 800s pulled out of service in 2019, a hole was drilled on an engine block. It is unknown whether this damaged the locomotive, but it is certain that it's not coming back to service. It is unknown whether it will be preserved or not. Like, seriously. I've seen conversation on trainorders.com and cs.trains.com, and I can't seem to find information about it. 800 went through 34 years of work on Amtrak and Metrolink. It has served its role well in the history of Amtrak, the National Passenger Rail Corporation, and also in the history of Metrolink, the Southern California Regional Rail Authority. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Engines Metrolink. Now, we only have 2 more episodes left of the series. These episodes will be on active locomotives, so expect them to be shorter. So, tune in next time where I discuss the Motive Power Incorporated MP36PH-3C. Stay tuned, and thank you again for watching. Oh yeah, I have a Discord now, so check that out in the description. Christ, how much have I said that today?